Hello, I have a couple of comments for you about the process flow or workflow project that you're looking at here. Some of the things that I want you to think about as you're working through this activity is that the purpose of this is to help you get behind the computer screen or think your way behind your computer screen or your tablet or your smartphone or your laptop, whatever it is that you use to access data within your organization. And I want you to think about what brought that data to you. Okay, so the data that you have has been entered somewhere through some type of transaction processing system. It's likely been cleaned and stored in some type of data warehouse, and then through your information system, whether it's an ERP or whether it's a functional area system, your information system is then gathering that data, analyzing that data, and presenting that data to you, hopefully in some visual format, such as graphs and charts and colors and shapes and all that kind of stuff, so you can make sense of it quickly and understand the data that you have in front of you. Now, what I want you to think about with this activity is I want you to think about what you're doing with that data, what has happened to it to get to you, and what's going to happen to that as it moves on down the process after it clears your desk. Okay, so the process, you're going to choose some process within your organization. And I really leave this open because each organization is different. Some of you can think through the development of a product. Some of you have to choose only one particular process because there's so many different things that go on within your organization. So it's really open for you to choose the process that you want to analyze here and think about. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick this process, and I want you to diagram the process. So write it out on a piece of paper. Usually, most of these things have somewhat of a checklist that they have to go through of bullet points, so it's easy for you to identify the steps and the stages, and you may already know what they are. If there's no identified set of steps, then do the best you can. Okay, the purpose of this activity is not for it to be 100% accurate, perfect replica, but the purpose is for you to think through what is happening and then to apply the covering your bases model to think about who and what is happening. So the who is the people, internal and external. And you can define internal however you want. If your organization is very large and there's multiple business units, multiple departments, and multiple functional groups within the departments, maybe you need to just focus on your unit as the internal unit, and the others within your organization, even though it's the same company, sometimes we work with people in the same company as if they're external to us. For example, here on campus, I work within the College of Business. So for some things, I would consider my area in the College of Business the internal group. Other colleges and departments across campus would be external. Because I don't work with them on a regular basis. They're not a normal part of my daily workflow, and so they would be external. What they do with the data is different than what I'm doing with the data. But I could also define them as internal if I wanted to look at the entire university as a whole. So it's up to you as to what your perspective is going to be. But once you choose that perspective, you need to identify in your report what's internal and what's external. Okay, so then once you've got that defined, it's going to be easy for you at each stage along the process to identify who are those internal people that are impacted and who are the external people that are impacted, and what are the processes that are going on at each stage, internal and external, and how are those processes impacted by what's happening at that stage in the process. And so what students usually find is they see an area where perhaps the things that they do internal have a huge impact on the external parties, but they're never considered or they're never brought into the discussion at that part of the process. They're not brought in perhaps till later on, and at that point it's either too late to make a change or it's too hard to make a change. And so they see that, hey, we could bring somebody in from outside of our group at this point in the process and make things flow better. Or they look at the way data is used in two different processes, inside and outside, and they see that there's they're not exactly doing the same thing, or they're looking at things from a different perspective, or they've got a different understanding of the data. And so you can clean things up by sort of walking through each step, and at each step just ask yourself what's going on, who's being impacted, and what are the processes that are using this data and creating this data and bringing this data to my desk so that I can do something with it and move it on through the next stage of the process. So that's an overview of this project. I'm looking at it on my screen here. One of the things I want to mention to you is a lot of people always ask, how long does it need to be? Well, each professor may be different, but I personally like the Goldilocks Rule. I don't like fluff added to reports, but I also don't like important information taken out. And if I give you a target of 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages, that's what you're going to write to. And if you can do it in 3 pages, but I've asked for 5, you're going to add 2 pages of fluff. And I don't want fluff. If I asked for 5 pages and you actually needed 8, because maybe you needed a lot of graphics, you needed a lot of charts, then you're going to cut things out that are important to bring it down to 5. So the Goldilocks Rule, not too long, not too short, but just right, exactly what it needs to be to say what it needs to say. And make sure it's professional and well written. It's grammatically correct. It's visually appealing. Write this and present this as if you were going to give it to your boss's boss. Okay, so the person who's 2 steps above you. And think about how you would want to present yourself to somebody who is that high in the organization. If you are that person, then you ought to know what you would like to see somebody hand to you. So looking for very professional, clean, visually appealing, grammatically correct reports. The design is up to you. I don't really care for large font sizes, 10, 12, whatever you think looks the best. And spacing and colors, whatever you want to do is completely up to you. I give you complete poetic license to design this the way you think it should be designed, creative license, and make it look nice, make it look like a good representation of you and your work. So that's a little bit of an overview here. I still think you should read all the instructions here on the page, and if you have any questions, you should certainly ask your questions. And it would also be worthwhile for you to check with your particular professor to see if they would like something different than what I have described in this video. Thanks a lot, and good luck on this project.